morning, good evening, and good afternoon. I hope you guys been having a wonderful day. I know I have, and it's been a very interesting week in the world of gaming, especially with the new news of layoffs happening in Sony. So I figured for this week's episode, we will be looking at the video game industry, since again, Sony announced major layoffs in the amount of 900 employees, which is insane. And this isn't the first layoff we had in 2024. Activision, Microsoft, Ubisoft, Riot Games, Unity Software, and many other studios have been doing major layoffs in the past year, and it's all tied within the changing video game industry. And honestly, with how bad Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League is doing, I really wouldn't be surprised if Warner Brothers did some major layoffs as well. And honestly, all these layoffs can be tied to three major factors that have changed within the industry in the past 20 years. And these three major factors are sales, trust, and cost. And in today's episode, I'll be breaking these three factors down. First, we're going to be going into sales. When it comes to video games, sales are everything. If a game does not sell well, it does not bode well for the studio. And depending on the type of game it is, the studio can either make a new game after learning from its mistakes, or if it's a live service game, do a rehaul of the game entirely, which isn't something new. Other games have done it before. Final Fantasy, I want to say 14 had done this. Diablo 3 has done this as well. Now, when it comes to sales, the video game industry has changed a lot since the early 2000s, when people would buy a game not knowing if it was good or not, to now where information is readily available and most studios show gameplay to rack up interest for those to buy. In 2023, the video game industry reportedly made $184 billion. Yes, $184 billion. Not million, billion. Compare that to 20 years prior, when the video game industry made only about $7 billion in 2003. You can see why this is important. Sales has grown tremendously with so many new demographics who before really hadn't touched a video game console, now getting into the world of gaming. And not to mention, if the game doesn't sell well, it's an early grave for the franchise, even if that. But even if it does sell well, that's not enough. One of the significant changes we have seen is live service games, where they have had a battle pass system in place. Even non-live service games, like multiplayer games, have a battle pass now. Fortnite was the first game to introduce a battle pass, which has been widely adopted by almost every studio that has a multiplayer aspect. In 2018, a year after Fortnite launched its Battle Royale and Battle Pass, the net worth of Epic Games, the parent company, was at $4.5 billion. In 2024, their net worth is now worth $75 billion. So that just shows you how much battle passes have changed the gaming industry, for the better and for the worse. In 2018, Call of Duty saw the success of the battle pass and introduced it in 2018's Black Ops 4. Now in 2024, with Modern Warfare 3, the battle pass has been fully integrated and is advertised every time you play the game, whether it be zombies or multiplayer. You just see that battle pass rank up and you see that you unlock some stuff, but you have to purchase the battle stuff to actually get them. Live service games survive on battle passes because a lot of the money is spent keeping the servers online for host players. If you look at Avengers, while it could be played offline, a majority of its content was for online use, and it had a big battle pass that players could purchase for skins, hero cards, and etc. And the most controversial thing about this was, for a time, players could buy XP boosts and level up faster, which was important because your character's power was linked to their level. Very similar to an RPG. You could tell that there was a lot of focus on people buying the battle pass because there was a lot of lack of in-game content, especially post-game as well. Sales plummeted and the servers were taken offline barely 2 years later. Overwatch is a prime example of a game that survival is based on sales. Most recently, the battle pass system. Before Overwatch 1, you actually had to purchase the game. After that, they would offer you chances to earn skins after purchasing the battle pass. So there was more money on getting people to buy the game and then selling them on the battle pass. More recently, with the release of Overwatch 2, the game is free, with basically no difference between 2 and 1, except for them wanting you to spend more for the battle pass. Because why work on new maps, new anything, when they can just add new skins and make money off of that? And honestly, this method doesn't always work. It works for a lot of stuff, but not always. Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League is learning this the hard way. The game is a huge step down from Rocksteady's game's previous Arkham games, which focused on single player experience, and they opted for a live service with this newest game. The game can't be played offline. Even playing it solo needs everyone to have an internet connection, and everyone is carrying a gun. Add that to the game is basically repetitive, grindy, and worst of all, riddled with advertisements to purchase the battle pass. While the game did sell well because nothing big in the video game world dropped by the end of January to early February, this game can only be played online, and since Warner Brothers have plans to release new seasons, sales alone is not going to help if no one buys the battle pass. As previously stated, sales do make a big difference, and what type of sale matters has changed in the past 20 years of the gaming industry. Honestly, if you want a prime example of this, look at Halo Infinite. They have so much not offering when it comes to their single player experience, trying to push for the multiplayer for you to buy these new skins. Heck, they haven't even released anything significant to add to the game since its release. They've only pushed for people to buy the battle passes, spending so much money for these skins that are worthless. It's insane that buying the game alone isn't enough to make these companies happy. They want to sell you on these battle passes and everything else to make that extra buck. But anyway, it's time to move on to the next factor, which is trust. Now, this is probably the most important of the three factors in my opinion, because without trust in a company or gaming studio, there is no next time for a game. And a lot of studios seem to forget this. Many studios that haven't forgotten this have thrived in the video game industry. Look at Rockstar Games. Take-Two Entertainment. They are responsible for many popular franchises, most notably GTA and Red Dead Redemption. Every time one of these games releases a new entry in the series, their sales explode, and the hype that surrounds them is unreal. Look at GTA 6. It's the upcoming entry in the GTA series, and it's a prime example, as 5 was released over 11 years ago and is still popular. And that is because while a lot of Rockstar's money from the GTA franchises come from their online side, they still focus on the single player experience as well. Both entries in GTA and Red Dead have a massive story that has hours upon hours of content alone, which is amazing, and they're written beautifully and have some absolutely insane characters. They also focus on the online side as well to make sure that there's enough content for players to enjoy after they either play the entire campaign or they can just hop on and off whenever they want. And they release new content as well to keep players occupied. It's no wonder that this method has led to GTA 5 making $7.7 billion in its lifetime, which is incredible for a game that is 11 years old. And it's still making money and will still make money until GTA 6 releases. And when every time a new version of it comes out for the new consoles, people go and buy it because they gotta have GTA. They gotta have GTA 5. It's always gonna happen. And with 6, I really don't see that changing at all. And it's amazing because having trust in a company guarantees that people will pre-order the game and tell their friends about it. I remember my friends bullying me to buy GTA 5 because it was such an amazing game. And when I did, I thanked them for it. Not for the bullying, but I thank them for recommending the game because honestly, it's great. A studio that actually has my trust, my 100% trust, is Insomniac Games. They have released all the recent Spider-Man games since 2018, and each entry of this series has been a love letter to Spider-Man. With new innovations, great storytelling, and many players were hyped for the new entry that was released last year, to the point where many players, including myself, waited for 50 minutes for the PlayStation Showcase to finally show us a trailer, a peek into Spider-Man 2. And the fact that the game isn't riddled with a battle pass or a bunch of stuff locked behind a paywall was nice. The knowledge of buying a completed game was so nice, knowing that there was nothing that the game had to offer that was locked behind something that I already didn't spend money on. And this means that I really don't mind paying for DLC content because it is extra stuff. It's just the cherry on top because it's stuff that they worked on after the main story was completed, after you got the full story, and it gives you hints on what's to come. I do have other studios besides Insomniac that I do trust, like Santa Monica Studios, Sucker Punch, and Naughty Dog, and that's because they consistently produce quality games, and losing trust can hinder a company as well. Look at EA and Activision. Because of the lack of quality in the games that they have provided, a lot of their games have been hit by low sales because of their predatory methods. A good example of this is from Activision's Call of Duty franchise. For more than a decade, there has been a new Call of Duty game every year, with more recent games being no different from the games that came before them. This has hindered them with their game sales being lower than expected. If you look at Vanguard, it was the lowest sales release COD game since 2007, which was not good for a game that was released after Cold War, which was released in 2020 and made expectations despite releasing during that entire screw up of a year and made less sales. MW3 has reportedly did worse in sales than Modern Warfare 2, which was released a year prior, because people have stopped expecting quality games and has turned away from the Call of Duty series altogether. Activision has lost the trust of many because of this, and it really sucks. Again, looking at another game from Activision, Overwatch 2, many were not happy when the PvE mode, which was promised for years and was promised for when Overwatch 2 was announced and was released, was nowhere to be seen, only for it to be canceled and the story mode basically hidden behind a paywall. With Activision and many other studios not taking the blame despite being entirely their fault, it leaves a bad taste in players' mouths. Compare this to Helldivers 2, which released recently and exploded in popularity despite it being plagued with server issues, bugs, and other issues. Arrowhead, the studio behind this game, apologized for everything that was happening and stated that they didn't expect the game to explode like this and kept players updated on the status of the game, which was a nice change of pace. People didn't turn away because the studio took the blame even though it wasn't entirely their fault. If you look at their comments, they even stated, hey, we didn't expect this game to explode. And honestly, I didn't blame them for that. Everyone, including myself, basically ignored the game during showcases, didn't really pay attention to it until it exploded in popularity thanks to TikTok videos being shown, showing that the game was actually enjoyable. And Arrowhead took everything in stride. They focused on preparing the servers, making sure that the server capacity would grow before even working on the next steps. They didn't ignore players. They wanted to make sure that we were enjoying ourselves, that we were taking care of way before they wanted to make money. Heck, they even said in a tweet, please don't buy Helldivers 2 right now because you won't have the great experience until we update the server capacity. That is insane. A studio saying don't buy their game so they can improve it? Honestly, again, amazing. You're probably tired of me saying that word, but it's incredible for a studio to say this, to care more about the players than making money, and it has paid off significantly. And players won't forget this. Now, with the server issues almost fixed, not entirely, but almost fixed, they have now focused on the new content that was promised, which makes players like me happy. And it honestly shows again why it's important to have the trust of the players, to have the trust of the people, because without it, you cannot have a successful franchise. You can try, but more often than not, players will turn away. And when that happens, even when you release a good game, it'll already be too late. Now, the third and final factor, which has been tied to the layoffs and the ever-changing video game industry, is cost. Because regarding the layoffs, the more recent layoffs we have seen is mostly because of cost. It's no secret that video games have gotten more expensive over the years. I mean, think about it. About 4 years prior, the standard for a video game was $60, which has increased by $10, which is now the standard of $70. While some of this can be mostly tied to greed, a majority of it comes to the cost of actually making a video game, especially a AAA game. Sony most recently announced that it would be laying off, again, 900 employees, which included employees from various studios like Insomniac, Santa Monica, Naughty Dog, and more, despite most of these studios making award-winning games that have sold successfully. This specifically is due to the cost of producing these types of games. The most recent Spider-Man game cost the studio $300 million to make, and a majority of that money went into the cinematics. The cinematics in Spider-Man were amazing, and this is what a lot of Sony games are known for. Their graphics looking realistic, and the world looking so polished and beautiful. It is very sad to see that a game that sells well and has the trust of the fans and players must let go of employees to keep the costs down. But that's the name of the game. It also comes to the fact that these studios make games specifically for PlayStation, so their player base, while large, is still limited to one console. Until 2 years later, around the 2-year mark, when a game has come out, then it moves on to PC. But by then, the layoffs have already happened. Microsoft laid off 1,900 employees to keep costs down, while unlike Sony was due to a lot of their games failing and the recent merger with Activision Blizzard. Ironically enough, just because a game costs so much more to make does not guarantee that the game will do well. A lot of indie games, like Lethal Company, had a very limited budget to actually make the game, but in 2023 made over $113 million, with the game costing most likely less than $10 million to make, if that. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if the game was made well, less than 5. And with the cost and the revenue being compared, the revenue outweighs the cost in a significant way. And it makes sure that they don't need to lay off any employees. With more and more AAA games pushing the boundaries of games, looking real, being able to do more than what has been done in the past, the cost to make these types of games will only increase. So in the end, there is higher risk of a studio laying off employees to stagnate the cost of making them. The only difference is there is no way of telling when that will happen. Companies like Microsoft have started to put their games day one on Game Pass, which allows players to pay a subscription to play any game. And with Xbox putting these expensive AAA games on there, while it does guarantee a lot of players will have access to them, it does not allow the studio who made the game to recoup the cost of making the game, because they're getting only a percentage of the subscription that players paid, while before they would be getting a bigger piece of the pie from players buying the game and it being easier to track. This is why PlayStation is doing well, because it takes a few months before any new games are put on their Game Pass, which allows companies to recoup the cost of making the game itself, lessening the chance of layoffs. Now again, this isn't 100%, but it does help, and it allows for studios not to be closed down as well. So like I've stated before, sales, trust, and cost are major factors on why a lot of studios have decided to lay off employees, and how those factors are part of the ever-changing video game industry. Studios like Warner Brothers want to make more and more live service games, in the same way they made Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. And honestly, if they treat these new live service games like they treated Suicide Squad, it's only a guarantee that these games are not going to sell well, and these studios will lay off more and more employees, despite it not being even their fault, because they wanted to do something different. If you look at Rocksteady's original plans for the next entry in the Arkham series, it sounded amazing. It was going to be single player, it was going to feature an older Batman, it was going to have Damian Wayne take on the mantle, and it was going to include the Nemesis system, where your actions affect the game entirely. Whether you either turn on a rat, you fight somebody, you forget to capture somebody. It would have been amazing, but of course, Warner Brothers was blinded by greed and made the next entry Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, which is a shame. And it's not going to be the end of these live service games where they only want to make money. Hopefully, when these studios see that these types of games are not selling well, the future of the video game industry might improve so we get quality over quantity. But only time will tell that. And that is it for this week's episode of Fuent Chat with Johnny Fuent. I really hoped you've enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed researching this, looking into and figuring out the factors of what's going on in the video game industry. It was really fun. And hopefully, if you want to look more into these numbers, you guys do your own research, because with more knowledge equals more power. And heck, if you're in a position to do something, please do, especially if there's like a studio executive listening to this. Please make the wise choices. We enjoy playing video games and don't want the well poisoned. But anyway, I'll see you guys next week. Sayonara, see you later, and have a blessed one. Goodbye.